Hi, good day. This is Rocco, and I've been hearing a lot of people saying that they need a little bit of help in being able to fly a helicopter, and I get it. Flying a helicopter is completely different to anything that I've ever done, even compared to aeroplanes. But being a helicopter pilot is like being a little bit like Peter Pan. Let's do a quick crash course in flying the helicopter. Maybe I can help somebody over here. So we're sitting at the end of the runway. It's the best, it's probably the best way to position yourself with the engines all started. So we're not going to go through the whole startup routine or anything like that. We just want to get the helicopter airborne. Today we are in the Bell jet range of the 407, and we are at the base of the runway, and all we want to do is learn. I've got my controller not really working the best. We want to learn how to manipulate this helicopter in the sky. So let's have a look at a couple of things. First of all, we have our normal joystick. Let's assume that you have not changed anything other than for flying. So if I pull the joystick to the left, it will tilt to the left. If I turn it to the right, it will tilt to the right. And you'll see the helicopter wanting to tilt to the right. Can you see that? I'm tilting it to the left and right. This to the left. Okay, we've got our throttle as well. And the throttle, you can see it by being this tube in the middle of between the seats. This is the collective, and the idea of that is every time you pull it up, if it's linked to your throttle, then it will change the blades. In other words, it will cut deeper into the air above. So the more throttle I put and the higher I lift the collective, the more the blades will cut, and the helicopter will want to go up or down. So there I'm going up or down. So this is what you've got to do to get the feel. First of all, just manipulate how far and how much you have to press to get your throttle, to get the helicopter up in the sky, and then also with it on the ground, work your rudders. Your rudders over there will help you by spinning the back rotor either faster or slower. Now, let's have a look at this helicopter as we see it over here. If I can just get this to work properly. Notice the rotor is spinning in a clockwise direction. If the rotor is spinning in that way, obviously the laws of science are going to say that if the rotor is spinning that way, then something is going to want to be spinning the other way, and in most cases it's going to be the helicopter. So if I just lift up the helicopter on its own without touching anything to change anything, the helicopter will want to turn around on its own just because of that, and you'll see that the helicopter will ultimately turn. So bearing that in mind, and with most helicopters working on this principle, we have to counter the effect of it spinning around, and the way we do that is with our rotor blades. You'll notice that if we go inside again, you'll notice when I use my rudders, that is on the rotor blades, the helicopter will compensate with that. Okay, let's make this easy. First of all, let's get ourselves up. So I'm going to give a little bit of rudder, and that's what you should do as well. And up we go. Okay, and make sure it's not too much. Get it to a point where you can feel that this helicopter is at one point in the sky, and it's very twitchy on that throttle. So get up and get into a point that we are hovering. Let's have a look at that from the outside. Here we are hovering. And Let's see the effect of various controls with that throttle set as it is. Let me just get this controller sorted out. Okay, first of all, we are going to turn to the left. The way we do it is we push the left rudder in. Notice the more I push it, the more it turns, and if I push the right rudder in, the more I push it, the more it turns. Now here's an interesting thing. Remember that we looked at the rotor spinning in a clockwise direction. If I give full rudder to the left, notice that she doesn't turn so fast. Yet if I do it to the right, she spins like crazy. And why would that be? Well, the answer to that is because the helicopter is already having its rotor spinning in a clockwise fashion. So that is something that is typical of all helicopters. It will not swivel that fast to the left, depending on the rotor direction, and it will swivel faster to the right. And normally when you take off, the helicopter is going to want to turn out. So you're going to have to feel which helicopter it is that you're working with. It normally works in this way. I know with the R44 that Some Pilot built, it does that. It also does that in the R44, in the H135, in the H145. It works in a similar type way. Okay, let's assume that we are back. Let's get us into the middle of this taxiway. Okay, let's figure out what our next tricks are to move this. So we're holding it in the sky in a hover again. Just make sure that she holds herself nice and clearly over here, nice and steady over here, and make sure that she doesn't spin. If you make little movements, only tiny little movements to move around. Let's have a look at what happens. One thing we didn't discuss is what happens when I push the joystick forward. Now, I want you to imagine the rotor on the top as being like a plate. You know, like a plate of food, but just the plate. And that plate, imagine it being on a stick and spinning around. You know, like those guys in the fairs do? Right. Now imagine that on the top of your helicopter. When I push the stick forward, imagine that that stick gets pushed forward and it starts pushing the wind more to our behind just by pushing it forward. Also, the helicopter is going to want to go down a little bit because we are not in a steady mode. So what happens when we start going forward is we're going to have to give a little bit of extra throttle, and that's what we do. Now, the same thing will occur if we're going backwards. If I pull the dish at the top backwards, the helicopter will want to go backwards and also want to descend. Once again, we have to give a little bit of throttle on that as well. When we come to a standstill, the helicopter, if you don't get the hover right, it will want to either go up or down. So you've got to get this really, really sorted out before you start flying this helicopter. Our next trick is going to be to taxi. Now this taxiing is super important because if you can taxi along a runway, you'd be able to fly that. You'd have the concept of flying. So here we're hovering. I'm pushing the nose forward a little bit. And as expected, the helicopter will start rolling forward. At this point over here, I want the helicopter to turn to my left. I'm going to push the left rudder to turn to the left. Remember, she won't turn as fast as to the right. And with that turn, I'm going to, and very small movements, by the way, and with the turn comes also aerodynamic lift or drop as we're going along. So you're going to have to figure out which way turns you when you're turning to the left or right, whether the a helicopter wants to go higher in the sky or not. Let's just do another turn to the left. Here we go. Nice turn along the center line over here. And she's not going to lift. And we're going to hold it in here. Okay. We've done a little bit of taxiing over here. Let's have a look at what happens when, instead of pushing forward or back, we take that stick and we now push it to the left. This is a very different thing to rudder. When I pull it to the left, notice the helicopter in a straight line will still look forward, but it will push our plate to the left and also want to fly to the left. When we push it the other side, it will push to the right. Just the same way. Guys, remember that there is all aerodynamics going on over here because of the spinning rotor. You know, someone described flying a helicopter like being on a ball on top of another ball. It is a really difficult thing to do. But you can get this right if you do these little tests on your own. So you want to test going to the left. And you want to test going to the right. Okay, my nose has gone down a little bit, so let's get that right. And let's get into our hover again, into the center line. Okay, I'm not expecting you to be perfect on this, and I'm not perfect on this, but I certainly will not put this helicopter into the ground. And you need to practice enough to be able to do that. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to go along the runway and we're going to practice fast stops. That will be our next test. So by pushing the dish forward, notice that the helicopter will drop its nose, and you don't want to push it into the ground, so you have to pull up the nose if it's going too much. And remember, the more we push it down forward, the faster it will start going. The faster it starts going, we're going to need to have a little bit more throttle behind us. So we can give a lot of throttle, but then we're going to have to push our dish forward as fast as we can possibly do. Okay, and here we are going, zooming along the runway. Try and keep it as straight on the runway as you possibly can. You can do a bit of compensation with your rudders as you're going and doing this. And at the end of the runway, we're going to want to stop. How are we going to stop? The same way as we started. We'll pull the nose back. But remember, if we pull the nose back at speed, she's going to want to go up. So we're going to have to stop the throttle, drop the throttle a little bit. Here I'm pulling back on the throttle. She's going down. And now I'm pulling back on the stick. And the nose goes up. But our forward speed decreases until it's stopped. When it stops completely, she's going to want to fall down into the ground. So that's where we put our throttle again. Let's turn around to the left. Or should we do it to the right, which is far faster? Let's get on center line and do the same thing down the runway that we did early on. Getting onto the center line and pushing it forward. Pushing the nose forward. Reacting with throttle to keep it at the same altitude. And with rudder. Whoa. This doesn't have an autopilot, guys. So this is how she's probably going to react. She'll probably be spinning all over the place. You just need to get it right. Once you get the feel, you'll get it working nice and straight. And once she's going flat out, then the tail itself will help you to guide the rudder, the helicopter. It will work like something like a windmill. Okay, and we're going to stop. So we're pulling back the throttle first. That's what I like to do. Pull back the stick. And remember, she's going to want to spin when we pull back the throttle to the left, so we put on a little bit of right rudder. You'll get the feel. Now, I used to have this amazing helicopter instructor pilot when I was learning how to fly, and I learned on the R22 and the R44. And what he made me do was he took me to some fields where there were hares or rabbits running around the field, and he made me chase them. This sounds like crazy, but what it did do is it made me, instead of wanting to overthink what I had to do with my hands, it made me fly for the first time, to forget about my hands and rather chase the rabbits and let my body work out on how to fly. And this is a very, very good tool to do. Let's see if we can try and find. Okay, what we're going to do here is we're going to, at every single taxiway, we're going to turn to the left or right, and we're just going to do a figure of 8. Here we're turning to the left, pulling the helicopter to the left. Notice she tips over. And now we have to turn to the right. I'm using my rudder to do that. And we're going down one more. And we're getting to this taxiway over here. And we're going to be turning right again. Let's turn right. Perfect. And onto the main runway. And let's turn her out. So that is a really good way to get used to the helicopter and to follow, to get a feel for the helicopter. Don't think about anything except following this in a type of figure of 8 type format. The tower constantly calls me. I'm just going to ignore that for a little while. And we're going to go forward. Now, and we'll get faster and faster and faster at this as we go along. Here we are at this taxiway. We're going to just want to turn right. So now let's position ourselves on the ground at the base of the runway. Right, from here we're going to accelerate along the ground. We're going to be doing a circuit to the left, and then we'll come back for a landing. Lifting ourselves up, we'll push our nose to the ground, and what happens is, with all the wind blowing onto the ground, it further pushes our helicopter into the sky. So that helps us. We don't need to use as much throttle as we would if we were doing the same thing in the sky. So we're trying to get acceleration here. Remember, the faster we go, the more lift we are going to get with our dish at the top, which acts as a wing in itself. And when we are going fast enough, we can lift ourselves up, and I would not give full throttle at all. I would give it like 70 or 80% throttle only, because that might be overdriving the rotor. And then we can lift ourselves higher and higher and higher. So I'm going to allow the helicopter to go up a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. And we are now at approximately a circle altitude. We are now going to turn into our left square. Let's do that. So I'm tilting by pushing the plates to the left, and now straightening the plate and pushing forward on the plate all the time with a lot of enough power from the engine. I'm doing the same thing to the left again, so we can aim the opposite direction and give a little bit more throttle. We don't want to drop down. And here we're going down the opposite of the runway heading as we do our square. And just after we've passed the base of the runway, we'll turn out to the left. I'm not going to wait till the whole thing happens. Remember, it's not an aeroplane. We can land relatively quickly. I'm pushing it to the left, and the helicopter will now turn 90 degrees. And I'm carrying on with this as we get towards the runway, whereby I will then turn to my left again and attempt to stop. And that's what I'm doing over here. I'm now turning, pulling out to the left, turning onto the runway, and I'm now going to drop my power a little bit, and I'll pull back on the stick. Let's just get this right so we can see what we look like. Pulling back on my stick slowly and gently pulling back on the power until we get into a hover. And when she is in a hover, remember she's going to want to go down. We're going to put a little bit more power. And now we're in hover mode. And we can land anywhere. So you're going to need to do a couple of those circuits yourself. Also, practice going along the taxiways. Try follow a line. For example, this one over here, the bell doesn't have any assistance whatsoever, so we have to do this manually. So you'll use rudder in order to make turns on the ground so that the helicopter doesn't fall to the side. Rudder will turn us like a weathercock does. Just turn the back of the helicopter around. And you then need to practice stopping. So our next practice stuff will be your next lesson. Once you are good with following the roads or the lines, you need to practice to stop on certain positions. So for example, let's say we want to stop on that red dot over there. Well, we'll position from that side. I'm pulling it over to the right. I'm now weathercocking it with my rudders. And I'm leaning over to the left. And now I'm going to inch my way forward, dropping my throttle so that she gets closer and closer and closer to the ground. Now pulling back on my stick. Pulling back a little bit more until she gets stopped. And then I'll just drop the throttle down. And she's on the ground. So you want to do that on different places. So let's say we're going to be pushing forward again. And we can choose anywhere we like. That's the cool part of a helicopter. It's like being Peter Pan. You can stop wherever you like. But let's practice our turns. We now are using our rudders to turn over here. You don't want to get too high at an airport, and you also don't want to go too fast. Your speed must just be as if you're going in a slow run along the runway when you're taxiing, not too fast. I'm just a little bit impatient here. You see the circle here? I see it in the middle of the white line. Let's go and position ourselves in the direction of the line. So I'm pulling myself to the left until I slide in line with the yellow line. And I'm now pulling myself to the left even more, now to the right, now getting us there. Now we need to go a little bit forward. And my finger's on the throttle all the time. Pushing forward. We don't want it to go too much forward, so I'm pulling back a little bit, and that's exactly perfect where I want to be. And here I am hovering above the ground perfectly, and down I go. So you're going to want to do that quickly, and the faster you can do it, the better. Let's take off again and head out to the base of the runway. And let's see if we can turn around and just get ready for takeoff over there. So I'm pulling her up. If she looks like she's bulleting into the ground, then throw a little bit more power into her face. Let's go right to the beginning of the runway. And if she looks, if your power isn't enough, then pull back on the stick a little bit, but all tiny, 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 tiny little movements. Okay, so we now are coming up to the base of the runway. We want to turn around. Let's pull back on the stick, pull back on the throttle. So she's going to want to settle. We don't want her to climb at all. And now we'll use our weather cocking effect, making sure that we have enough throttle. We'll go on to that number 10 over there. And we'll turn her around. Again, like this. And we're ready to roll. Okay, now we're ready to take off. I'm leaning her to the left so she'll get into the center line again. And when I'm ready, slowly I will increase the throttle and slowly I'll push the nose down. So here I'm doing it again, pushing it hard, pushing it hard, pushing it hard, and going as fast as I possibly can. When I get to a fair amount of speed, let's say about maybe 80, I can lift her up in a straight line and start getting some height. And when you're at the height you choose you want to stay at, push the nose forward again so that you maintain that height. Remember, pushing the nose forward is the natural position that most helicopters will be in. Okay, hope you've learned from that. We could do also a whole bunch of things like quick stops. If we wanted to stop quickly, there's a really good way of doing that. You will turn the helicopter to the left, push up the nose like that, and then straighten up again. That is a quick stop. And she'll stop immediately because you're throwing the plate into the wind. So I'm going to give it a throttle again and we'll try a quick stop again. Okay, I'm leaning out just to get that speed along the runway. And at the end of this runway, or let's say now we want to do a quick stop, what we'll do is we'll pull back on the nose, turn the helicopter out. Okay, let's take our helicopter now and go park it in front of the tower or something. Turning with my rudder again. Love the balloons over there. And slowing down a little bit. Let's park somewhere where that... look at this aeroplane spinning around. Wow. Okay. Let's say we want to park where that balloon is. And we're pulling... I'm pulling back on the engine, the throttle. And where we're going to put her down, let's say in between that line and that arc. So we're pulling down on that, pushing forward on the nose so she inches a little bit forward. And we want to get into a hover, not up, not down. We just want to get into a hover and allowing the helicopter to fall to the left or to the right as we hover a little bit forward, and that should be what we want. And we can put it down over there. And we can wave at the guys in the balloon. Okay, hope that helped some of you. So let's see how that works.